Show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
Hi there, world, and you're on Untold Radio. I'm about to burst into hysterics here from sheer tiredness, Aspasia.
Is that what it is?
Welcome to episode 97. We're getting closer to 100. We're getting closer to 104.
104, yes.
Yes, will be the 2-year mark. But the 100th episode has got some meaning. Sure. I'm amazed we're actually even doing this episode tonight.
Well, this is a really... It's going to be a short one.
It's going to be a short one.
We're just bookending it, really.
What I'm telling you is it's going to be a short one, but even though the interview with Richard Dolan is less than 15 minutes, you're going to feel like it's about a half an hour. So much is jam-packed into this interview.
Sorry.
What a thing to say. 2019, we had the astounding, one of the most brilliant and compelling historians, researchers, the man who wrote about the UFO and the national security state. He's spoken about the UFO and the 21st century mind.
Yeah.
He is a great investigator, an extraordinary lecturer. He is an amazing agent. Are you yawning in Richard? So if you're watching this,
got
Richard,
nothing to do
apologies.
with Richard. This has got to do with what's going on in our life at the moment.
You're very scatological. We're actually losing our building. We've been in our archives for 23 years.
Yeah.
And we were told we're surrounded by property developers.
Yeah.
We're couched in the word corruption a little bit there, but it doesn't matter. That's the life of it. People with money against people that don't have money.
Yeah.
And we are being literally forced out of our home.
Yeah.
And we're sort of accepting it because we do need to move.
We
can't
no
be in rental
choice.
accommodation for the rest of the
choice.
No, we haven't. We're losing our staircase.
Anyway, well, let's go. Look, we'll just show
time. But the most important thing is
wind it up, will you?
An intimate interview in our archives. Why ufology? And this will actually show you another side, hopefully, of Richard Dolan's that you don't see so often. We will make sure that in the links, there's a link to Richard Dolan members. There's a link to Richard's YouTube channel. Richard is probably one of the most important, compelling ufological researchers the world has ever seen. And we are so glad to have had some time with him.
Absolutely.
And you know what? There's a lot in common. He started as a DJ. And he would be the first person, because we met him when he brought his beautiful bride-to-be out here, Tracy, to get married at Uluru.
They went up to the Northern Territory and got married up there.
Yes. So he would be the first person to say that we are broadcasting on Gadigal land of the Eora people, and we want to show and acknowledge and our respect for elders past, present, and emerging.
Nice.
Yeah, you're really difficult tonight. You know that in many, many ways.
You don't know what difficulty is, seriously.
Lots of people have been asking us, including our astounding professor of astronomy, Horace.
Yes.
I would love to see your archives. Now, Horace, please don't fall into a rapture or some sort of catatonic state. We are not the Smithsonian. We're not the State Library. We are chaos. Here's a little picture of our film archives leaving the building.
Going down the stairs.
Going down.
Yeah.
It's freaky. It's scary. It's hair-raising. I've had to travel hundreds of kilometres each day to house what is probably a third of the film we've got here. Wake and Fright, the original cut from the negative, uncut print of Wake and Fright. We screamed it to them. No one paid attention until they did the remastering of it. Jack Thompson's first film, Donald Pleasance. And what did Jack say that Donald told him to do? Give me a tip. What do I do as an actor? He goes, Jack, just feed the camera. Feed the camera. Well, I don't know how poignant that was. That was just literally absurd. We've had to go into sort of crisis mode. So we're selling off part of our building. This is like one of those grand
epiphanous
So this
Buddhist
was
moments of
last
transition.
week. We had a garage sale in here.
Yeah.
So we're having another one this Saturday.
And it had moments of like rapid feeding by vultures
it
and other
was.
moments of great benevolence and love.
It was.
This is a race for us. We were told we have February before the staircase comes down. Really? And now it's September the 5th.
Oh my God.
So we're going to move everything big
Only
out.
internal access for the...
Yeah, we've lived here for 23 years. Darling, we're going to go. I'm probably that.
What is that?
That's a record, darling, with some biological hazard in it. Don't worry about it. I've given this man a price on that and the devil with the penis.
Used to come here all the time here, especially when they had special film screenings. One thing that's going to be missed here is this this place is iconic, and it won't be the same without them.
It's a lifetime of work. It sort of dawned on me. 23 years has just gone by so quickly, so beautifully, with somewhere that was a base that we had access to it all. Now we don't. God, I love tragedy. I love tragedy and melodrama.
There was a little bit of vulture circling, you know what I mean? Just coming down.
There's people saying things and they haven't been here at all.
Well,
but
anyway,
good on them.
Yeah.
It's heartfelt and it's empathetic. We have to thank everyone that has supported us. Some people have donated extraordinarily online to help us through this,
which has been amazing.
And look, it is just what it is. The wheel, as Doug says, the wheel goes down, the wheel comes back up again. That's right,
every time.
And hopefully we will come back up if this does not kill us.
We're not down. It's just
so exhausting.
It's day in and day out.
We're actually finding ourselves falling over for no reason.
I tripped
just
twice.
Out of sheer tiredness.
I fell over once today going up the stairs, only because this dress is really long and I trod on it. That's a ridiculous thing to wear a long dress. And then when I was going to get Christian, our grandson, to drop him, so life still goes on around us. You know, I've got to deliver him somewhere for a show he's
doing Untold Radio, or are we?
Yeah,
doing
we are, but we're just yakking here a little bit because people have been asking us about what's happening with, where we live, because we live so far away.
What about people who
and
never
usually
tuned in before?
See how we're here like this?
Yeah.
It looks all neat and tidy, but around us it's just like it's boxes and fringe, red fringe.
Look, one of the signs that hit me this
I found a Nazi packet of crap.
Oh, what are you putting that up for?
It's just it's insane.
You just ruined the whole podcast.
The end of the world insurance
policy
fell off the
wall.
Event, it's just insane. The stuff that we've got in here.
We should have never played that German.
But even on the table, seriously, the table that we're sitting on, we've got old scales, we've got
broken Astro Boy.
It's just like, and it looks like it's all pristine and tidy and controlled, but it's just that's going to the new home. That's going on the front door. Yeah. You've got to keep the nasties away. Anyway.
Yeah.
So that's So around us is chaos, but we look like we're handling it and it's all good and it's all going forward. But it is, but in the midst of it. Anyway.
And that controversial package you just spoke about, that was given to us by someone in a big box of other stuff. We didn't
We didn't even realize it was in there. So there's some weird stuff in this place.
We collected a lot of material, and in the end, that material came to us.
Well, it was. I mean, a lot of, because we had all this stuff when people's uncles or dads
records, films,
or
60mm
fathers
films,
died
35mm
that
films.
were collectors. They would come to us and say, look, I don't know what to do with this stuff. My dad or my uncle or whatever.
It's not a library, really. It's not an
oh, my God. Do you want to stop interrupting me?
Okay, keep going.
My dad or my uncle or whoever, was a collector of this stuff. I don't know what to do with it. I'm not interested in it, but I don't want to throw it away either.
Right.
And so we say, look, bring it in. Let's have a look at it and we'll pass it on or, whatever. And, and because we had the space, we just put it in a corner and just leave it there. And now we're paying for it. Now we have to go through it really fast.
How about this?
What?
This, I didn't realize this. The Mu-Meson Archives is covered as followed.
Right.
In the event of complete destruction of the planet Earth by fire, flood, pollution, nuclear catastrophe, or any other such occurrence, the sum of $1 million shall be dispersed upon application by the insured and presentation of reasonable proof of loss of property or life.
Right. Okay.
So
end of the
how
world.
do you
Well,
actually get $1 million
how
once
do
you're
you
dead?
don't? You once the world is destroyed, how do you? There's nowhere to go.
In the event, this is clause 2, in the event of wiping out or removal of all human life, leaving the planet Earth intact, the sum of $500,000 shall be disbursed upon application from the animal or vegetable heirs of the human insured.
Well, we've got no.
Said application has to be accompanied by a notarized and witness testimony document.
That's I think this has taken the piss out of it.
In the event of the complete destruction of the universe, whether by divine intervention or man-made catastrophe, the sum of $5 million shall be disbursed.
Ooh, okay.
Upon application by the named insured or their heirs or presentation of reasonable proof or loss of property or
and
life.
it goes on and on and on.
In the event of a time warp or space warp, whether divine or man-made, which shall transfer the entire universe into another dimension, time continuum, or similar anomaly, the sum of $1 million should be disbursed. Disbursement shall be in the form of appropriate checks drawn on the St. Peter's Gate Bank and Trust Company of the Hayes International Bank and Trust.
Okay.
I don't believe
we had that at the door, did we?
Yeah, we
were
had
banking
it
on
fell
that.
off.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, all right. Let's get back to
in
this.
2019, thanks to the assistant of cinematographer and extraordinary artist, Campbell Drummond, we filmed an amazing interview.
In
Richard Dolan had come out on behalf of UFO Research New South Wales.
That's right.
We were touring him at that time, and Richard gave us quite a great amount of his time that afternoon, and we cut it down. Campbell did an amazing editing job with great visualization.
It's only just under 15
this really
minutes.
gives you an idea of this really does give you an idea of how, and this is something that's fascinated you and I all along.
Absolutely.
There is so much noise attached to the signal of ufology, but why do people that are incredibly on the other side of the fence all of a sudden slip into this subject matter? What is the lure? What happens?
Well,
what has driven them there in the first place? Because it is a difficult subject to tackle, especially from an academic level and scientific level. But once you start to look at the evidence, even though we know it's probably 5% of the signal is so compelling.
Some people, it doesn't matter what evidence you lay out in front of them. They've got their mind. They can't see it. They don't want to see it. That's a closed-minded person. Do you know what I mean? They always come up with some reason why it's not. And you can't change those people's minds, and that's okay. That's okay too. You just got to let people be. But then, usually if somebody who's, quite astute or educated or has got some degree in something, they have some sort of an experience themselves, that's usually what will tip them over into investigating it, trying to sort it out for themselves. And once you actually start to really look into the cases with an open mind, then you can start to see things, in a different light. Mightn't be the right light, but in a different light. So that's what we're doing.
Broaden your mind and realise there's a major crack in consensus reality.
There is. Of course there is. The world is not the way it is presented to us on the television or on Facebook or anywhere. It's usually something else.
Richard is an extraordinary person. So is Tracy. We want to thank them deeply for the time we spent with them. Profound. I mean, once you spend time with Richard, but there's similarities there. Richard started off as a DJ. And in many ways, we should hit the dance floor with this man anytime you can. So here's Richard Dolan from 2019, an intimate interview in our archives. You're on Untold Radio. My name's Jay Katz.
And I'm Aspasia.
And this is Down South Anomalies. And this really is why ufology.
I was in a bookstore in Syracuse, New York, where there was a UFO book on the display, and it was Timothy Good's classic, Above Top Secret, subtitled The Worldwide UFO Cover-Up. I'd never read a serious analysis of UFOs. It was around 93, 94, and I bought the book and read it, became really into this book. And the deeper I looked, the more convinced, and I would have to say obsessed, I became with finding out what is the real truth with this phenomenon that has been ridiculed again and again and again by our official culture. After a few months of looking for the pro side of it and the con side of it, it was very clear to me that there was a lot going on here, and that there was a lot for me to be suspicious of in terms of the attitude of our national security apparatus and the media and everything else. As I started researching UFOs, I would have stacks of UFO books lying around my office. Eventually it's a wall of them, but even in the 90s it was stacks and stacks of all of these UFO books. I had nowhere else to put them, and people would notice. And they would start offering their stories to me. When I became hooked on the subject and convinced that it was legitimate was by going through government documents that were released through Freedom of Information. So when you start reading one declassified document after another, one by a 3-star general named Nathan Twining. Twining in 1947 wrote a very detailed memo in response to another general, Charles Shulgin, about this flying disc phenomenon. And Twining's memo totally confirmed the reality of the UFO phenomenon, of these flying saucers. So you're reading a classified memo at the same time that the U.S. government's telling the public there's nothing to this. And Twining's memo is just one of many that I read early on that were describing the UFO subject in a deeply serious, problematic way. One of my favorite memos to quote, I think, is one of the most important. It's one of the most important confirmed ones that we have. Late 1952, a memo by the CIA's Director of Scientific Intelligence to the Director of the CIA, and he's simply stating that, the reports of these objects at unexplained speeds and altitudes over sensitive installations are not explainable by natural phenomenon or known types of aerial vehicles. He was very explicit. In other words, saying, this is going on. It appears to be intelligent. They're over our sensitive installations, and we don't know what they are. These are not hints or speculations. These are confirmations by people at the top of our national security food chain, as it were, that this is important and it's going on and requires immediate attention. There's a definite nuts and bolts aspect to this phenomenon. It's tangible. It's real. There's an intelligence that is here. They are interacting with us in various ways, but they're also interacting with us in ways that are beyond our normal ability to grasp. Occasionally I've talked about the documentation from the 1976 Iranian jet interceptor case. I like that case because it's very well documented. It's 3 pages, single-spaced. The distribution list goes to the President of the United States, Gerald Ford, Director of the CIA, George Herbert Walker Bush, and National Security Advisor, Henry Kissinger. Not a bad distribution list, 1976, for an amazing encounter. Another case that is really important to me is a 1994 Ruwa, Zimbabwe case. You have 62 school children in that country. That's a fascinating case because you've got these brilliant, beautiful little kids, 8, 9, 10 years of age, describing a landed craft with beings that communicated with them telepathically. These children clearly are absolutely truthful. I mean, the debunkers are everywhere. No matter how good a case is, especially the best cases, there's always a debunker who's got it right in the crosshairs. But I've not seen anyone ever try to take this case down. There are a number of Australian cases that have continually intrigued me. Whether we're talking about the Kelly Cahill case from 1993, the Peter Corey case from a year before, which Bill Chalker wrote about in The Hair of the Alien. Fascinating case. I mean, absolutely bizarre, but fascinating. 1966, outside Melbourne, had its own schoolyard landing, which I think is quite fascinating as well. Australia definitely has got a lot of UFO history that I find interesting. In our own 21st century in the States, there are a number of cases that I think are very important. Stevensville, Texas, 2008. In 2008, at the time of the Stevensville case, which was a UFO, one guy described the size of a Walmart flying over Stevensville. Well, at the same time, at the most northern habitable location on planet Earth, it's a Canadian electronic surveillance station known as CFS Alert. Got about 50 guys there year-round, and it's super remote. And this gentleman that I know was stationed there in early 2008 and described how he was in the cafeteria one day just having lunch, and it was dark outside the windows, and all the lights for 10 minutes went on, brighter than daylight. His initial reaction was, oh, someone must have turned on the floodlights outside. A half hour later, the base commander came in with a group of about 10 guys. They had been out on a walk, and they came in ashen, like absolutely traumatized. And after talking with a bunch of these guys, he learned that they had seen a cigar-shaped UFO, an object, come right over the base. They watched it, crystal clear, according to them, where it shone this bright light down on the base for about 10 minutes. Turned the light off, and then flew off over the frozen Lincoln Sea in the Arctic Ocean. I worked with him on this to try to figure out what kind of craft, drone craft or otherwise, could have done this, and the answer is none. If you were to try to take a helicopter from the nearest base, American base 400 miles south, Thule Air Base in Greenland, you would die. Like, you wouldn't be able to survive. Plus, the helicopter really wouldn't have the range, and just couldn't do it. It wasn't a helicopter. There's no craft that we know of that have the types of range that this object clearly had, and the silent capability and the maneuverability that this thing had. Kehoe was one of my early inspirations for getting involved in UFO research. And Kehoe opened the door for allowing the UFO subject to become widely discussed in a kind of a sophisticated way. He was really important. A real believer in ending UFO secrecy, I believe. But Ruppelt was an Air Force captain who was the head of Project Blue Book in 1952, the big year that Blue Book was really dealing with all of these different reports. His book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, remains one of the most important UFO books in history, I think. What's interesting is that, he was very mature for such a young writer, and really made it clear that the UFO subject was very serious and was real. Now, what was interesting during the late 1950s is that Ruppelt put together a revision or a second edition of that book. Those 3 chapters are as if it were written by a completely different person. They're not just skeptical, they're like ham-fisted, heavy-handed debunking efforts. Like, I just have a hard time believing this was the real Ruppelt. I do know that Kehoe had learned of rumors that Ruppelt was under pressure to revise his book in the late 50s, and I think that's exactly what happened. And then, of course, he died shortly after that of a heart attack at the age of 37. Something happened to Ruppelt. And by the way, I don't know that he was murdered. Maybe he wasn't. But the ability to kill someone even by heart attack back then, that was real. The U.S. intelligence community easily had the capability, as did the Soviets. At the same time, of Ruppelt, as his conversion to the skeptic side, was that of Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter. Hillenkoetter was working with Kehoe all through the late 50s, early 60s to get UFOs discussed in Congress. And then at the last minute in 1962, not only backs out, but just says, we need to get off the Air Force, they're doing all that they can, and just walked away. I think what was going on in the mid-50s, the early through the mid-50s, there's evidence of these various factions within the U.S. Air Force and other elements of the intelligence community, including the U.S. Navy. And there were important individuals within the U.S. military structure that were supporting some opening of UFO data for the world public. And I think what happened is that by the end of the 50s, it was just slammed down. The guys on the other side, they're very capable. They have total control of mass media. They have total control over the academic system. And I mean total. They have complete control over the political system. They're not just going to walk away from the table and say, sure, here's your truth. I will say, looking at that book, that's UFOs and the National Security State, 1941, 1973. I look back at that book now. It's been a number of years, and I can have a perspective on it. It was the first really deep historical analysis in one volume that was like a comprehensive sort of analysis and narrative of the UFO subject. When I wrote that book and every other book that I've written, I feel like I'm writing with my mind, but I'm writing in blood. And what I mean by that is, if I can't rip away as much illusion about myself and about my subject as possible, then I don't want to bother. I want every book I write to be something that you can take away and remember elements of it. I wanted that book to be memorable, but that's always my goal. I want the books to be a great read as well as informative. I've had a few moments where I've wondered what's going on here. I used to get stopped at U.S. airports all the time, like every single time. They would always let me take my flight, but I would just be stopped for 10 or 15 minutes every time. Often, if I had a stop along the way, I would get stopped there too. And it was odd. I mean, this is, early post 9/11 era. And I've never known if it was because of my UFO chats or writings or because I started talking about 9/11. I've talked about 9/11 quite a lot over the years, and I believe that was an inside job, and I will go to my final breath on this planet stating that I believe it was an inside job, even if I don't know all the details of how it went down. I write about UFOs, but the thing that really scares me more than anything now, more than anything else, is the future of combination of artificial intelligence, gene editing, and just total financial global control and surveillance. Because what on earth are people going to do with their lives? I mean, there's always things to get depressed about. But I'm a historian, and I love reading all of human history from ancient times to today. And one thing that we got to remind ourselves of is that human history has always been filled with injustice. We're not unique in having difficulties. So we need to just, grow up, become a little tougher, become a little more clear-sighted, a little less afraid, believe in ourselves, and realize other people before us have done the same thing. And they've been able to stand up too, just like us. We can do it as well. This world is all about finding ways to siphon your hope right out of you. That's what it's all about. You're going to work for a company. They'll want your time, they'll want your mind, they'll want your soul. The whole system as it's set up right now is designed to get people to stop thinking independently altogether. So I tell young people, if you have a dream, you better pursue that dream to the bitter end, because it's the only shot. And the other thing I try to tell anyone who's got an inkling to do it is to find a way to work for yourself. I've always found a way to work for myself, and it's been hard, but man, I wouldn't trade that for anything. It's been the best thing. I feel like one of the luckiest people that I know. I get to spend my life researching things that I'm fascinated by, and exploring some of the most interesting questions I could possibly imagine. And I get to travel around the world and meet people like yourself to talk about it. So I consider myself very lucky, and it's all that I want to do. That was the most enjoyable interview I've ever done.
Okay.
All right. Well, that took a little bit of technical know-how there.
That's all right.
Thank you big time to Campbell Drummond.
Yeah,
thank
he did a great job
to UFO
editing
Research for bringing out Richard Dolan.
Yeah.
And thank you so much to Richard and Tracy, and especially Richard. What a passionate man.
Absolutely.
When he says that every word he commits to print in terms of the subject matter he investigates. And he's not just a ufologist. His interests are broad. We've seen him in many TV programs. We even saw him doing a ghost hunter series there at one stage. Yeah. He's eclectic. He's well-traveled. He is a patient, intelligent, academic, scientific approach to a subject matter that has been
Well,
for so long ridiculed that it should
there
now
has been a
actually.
concerted effort.
Yeah.
You know, and you can see it in lots of government memos, all kinds of government departments.
The suppression,
you
and
know.
that's why,
Yeah, absolutely.
Richard is a historian. Those two books
And
on
that's what
the
he looked
UFO
at.
and the national
Yeah.
security state are so important.
Absolutely.
The other thing there, and what really struck me and has struck us in our lives is that, you can there's two ways to go. There was many, many ways to go, but sometimes there's just two ways to go.
Mm.
And one of the most important ways is to follow your heart and have the courage to hold on to your own
Convictions.
authenticity.
Yeah, and your convictions.
And find that you can actually, survive based on what you really love, what really drives you. Because I believe there's a lot of people out there oppressed that never found that creative moment.
Yeah.
They never followed their
It's
potential.
sad. I feel
They
sad
think they
for
have
people.
to be locked into a cog.
Yeah.
And even though we've reached a point in our life
Mm.
that is so transitional,
It's no more cogging.
no, it's really refreshing. It's actually exciting to stand on the deck of a burning oil rig, but it keeps you alive and it makes you realize where your priorities lie, and they lie with the people around you.
Absolutely.
Entrainment people. We need to all work in harmony.
Is,
And
your
we
family
have
and
an
your
incredible
friends.
community, don't we?
Absolutely.
And we built that community on our artistic
Mm.
and intellectual endeavors. The last term there could be a little
Yeah,
shaky,
intellectual
but
sort of like
Yeah.
a bit dodgy, but anyway.
God, you make me laugh all
Yeah.
the time. And I want to say thank you to people like Malcolm and people that have been writing in next year and Air Force One, just, and beautiful,
Alex,
Catherine and
Catherine, and
Yeah.
yep. John Ayres.
so many great people
Yep.
and everyone behind the station for putting their support behind us as well. We are going to carry on. Hopefully next week we will
Yes.
have a great interview with a member of the original Triclops, the Australian version of the Survival Research Laboratories.
Yep.
People who muck around with where they find old V2 engines in scrap metal
Rockets,
yards and start reusing
and
them.
just strapping them to their backs.
Now,
Well, not
Ben
really, but
built his
yeah.
own flying platform,
Yes,
an
yes.
extraordinary device. We'll
Mhm.
talk about the history of flying platforms,
Mhm.
and we'll also have a look at that flying platform in action in Europe
Yes.
at a music festival. And it could have been just like the front of the Cybertruck if it fell out of the sky, because
That's
it was
right.
really driven by huge sort of propeller motors. It wasn't a turbine
Blades.
engine.
It was
Blades that
blades.
were open to the air underneath a
Yeah,
bit of
And
skirting.
you could just,
It
chopping
would slice,
blades.
dice, and julienne people. But
Yeah.
it didn't,
No, thank God.
fortunately.
Yep.
And Triclops did some extraordinary things. Molten Godhead, so
Yeah.
much great work.
Mhm.
Anyway, that will be coming up hopefully next week.
week.
And then we've got a big surprise we're going to
Well,
blow
we'll
here
see.
now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mr.
we'll see.
Roswell himself, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll
He's
see.
finally the great Don
Got
Schmidt.
back to us, which
Yeah,
is great.
he's been extremely busy, of course.
Unlike us.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I hope everyone's safe and well. It's a short episode, but I hope you enjoyed that
It
interview.
is. We've
with
got to get
Richard
back
Dolan.
into it.
And we were incredibly touched at what he said at the end there.
Yeah, we were.
He said, "Is this PBS on steroids?"
Okay.
No, it's Untold Radio, and it's Jay and Aspasia with
It
Down
is.
South Anomalies.
All right. We'll be back next week.
Take good care out there. We miss
God
you.
knows
No
what.
matter
Yeah.
what chaos is happening, you're going to see it live here every week.
Absolutely. Bye.